Good morning, everyone. I am going to try to keep this short and sweet in the beginning, and I'll get into more details on things in other videos or maybe towards the end of this one, but I just want to make sure that everybody kind of gets a gist of what an annuity is in this video, because that is what is parked in my garage. So if you watch video 2, I use the metaphor of talking about 403Bs as being garages that then house your different investments. And so what's inside of the garage is really what matters, because the garage itself is just kind of the shell, right? The 403B is just kind of the shell. So it's important to know what's actually inside of that. And that's what I'm learning about. I am just a social studies teacher. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not an expert. I'm learning as I go. I'm trying to share that information with other teachers so they don't make decisions without knowing better. This is all about just, again, knowing what questions to ask, because you can't evaluate a financial product if you don't even know what is inside of it. So with that said, I thought I owned a mutual fund. I thought that was what was parked in my garage. But in fact, what I own is an annuity. And the reason that this is kind of a big deal is I was investing pretty aggressively until I stopped payments recently. If you have questions on that, I can answer how to stop your payments until you know more. And there shouldn't be any penalty associated with that, by the way. But I was investing $550 per pay since 2019 into what I thought was a T. Rowe Price Advantage account for 2045, the year that I was aiming to retire. And that's on my statements. If you look at my statements, it says T. Rowe Price. It says that mutual fund on there. But when I dug a little bit deeper, what I found out is that, yeah, that T. Rowe Price mutual fund, it's definitely parked in my garage. It's in there. Again, sticking with this metaphor. So I have that vehicle parked in my garage, but there is a really expensive insurance policy on that vehicle. And, that's not to say that that's bad, right? Everybody kind of has the right to own whatever kind of vehicle they want. They have the right to buy the insurance that they want. That is like to the individual, right? That is, do what works for you. But what frustrates me is that when I purchased this product, I thought I was taking advantage of my 403B tax shelter. And when I sat down with my sales rep, they asked me all kinds of questions like, are you risk adverse? Are you somebody who's willing to take a risk? Well, I said, I'm good. Like, I'm relatively young right now. I feel like I missed the chance to invest earlier on because of the way that the market was, because of the way that my teacher pay was, because of how many kids I had in childcare. And so I was trying to make up for lost ground. And so I said, yeah, I want, let's go for it. I want to aggressively invest right now. I'm okay with high risk. So with that information being given to my sales rep, I thought that was going to result in the purchase of the right type of product, or the investment in the right type of product for me. And I didn't know what other questions to ask besides that. Later, now, I've come to find out that I didn't get that direct investment in the mutual fund. Instead, I have this insurance contract. And apparently, when I was sold this, I signed paperwork, an application. I thought it was the contract, but an application for this insurance product. And when I went back and looked through the fine print of that application, which, by the way, it was really hard to get that. I just want to say it took hours of me calling multiple people to get access to this documentation, because anyway, it doesn't matter. That contains a statement in there that says, I have read the prospectus, right? That I have, and I don't even know what that word, I didn't even know what that word meant, right? But the prospectus was this huge document, and it's this huge document that includes all this legal lingo about the ins and outs of this annuity insurance product and contract. I do not recall seeing that. I'm sure it was offered to me, but again, I just didn't know what I was doing. Hence the importance of having a better understanding of what it is that you're purchasing. So annuities, also, I have to say this too, annuities aren't necessarily a bad thing, right? It's an insurance product. There's a reason, there's a time and a place to buy an insurance product. Just like with my vehicle example, right? By the way, have insurance on your vehicles. But The benefit of annuities, you get, if you do it right, it can guarantee you some security when you're ready to retire. It can guarantee death benefits. It can guarantee, like, it has insurance guarantees so that you can have basically like kind of like your own self-made pension in a way, like it guarantees payment that way. But again, it's an insurance contract. It really wasn't what I was looking for when I was trying to invest aggressively to try to have as much growth as possible. Because like I said, I was trying to make up for lost time. So that's great. Annuities can offer these lifetime payments. Wonderful. Not what I was looking for. So what I had to start changing my question to when I figured out I was invested in this insurance product, which contains the T. Rowe Price, right? The T. Rowe Price would be the actual vehicle, the mutual fund, but that insurance that I have on that vehicle, that's what I needed to figure out, like what fees are associated with this, what layers exist with that. And when I look at my statement, I can see where every quarter they take out a whopping $3.75. So multiply that by 4. That's where I can see an actual like monetary deduction out of my account, right? I can see it right there. It cost me $3.75 per quarter. That seems like a pretty good deal for a maintenance charge, like if that's all I was paying. What I can't see in my statements is I can't see all of the other layers that go along with an insurance product. I cannot see the mortality and expense fee, which is calculated as a percentage. It's not a numerical amount. It's not consistent. It changes based on the amount that you're investing. And I can't see the expense ratios. And again, the expense ratios, it's a fraction, it's a percentage. And that's based off of how much money you currently have in your account. And again, this doesn't show up on my statements. I cannot see it. When I called my sales rep the other day to ask more about this, by the way, he calls himself a financial advisor, so calling him a sales rep might not be the nicest thing, but he did sell me this product. These fees, these expenses I'm telling you about that don't show up as withdrawals, when I was really pushing to try to understand how that money is coming out, like where can I find these percentages? What statement do I need? What like document, what spreadsheet do I need in order to see these expenses? When I really pushed him on that. And I was like, what percentage am I even being charged? Like, you keep telling me it's in this range between like 1 and 2.5. And he was like, well, yeah, it's somewhere in there. I would just count on 2%. I'm like, well, is it 2.3%? He's like, well, I don't know how much it is. And that was really frustrating for me because I don't know how to then verify that I'm being charged the correct amount. But again, I'm not really being charged. What they're doing is they're going in and reducing my stock holdings, my shares within T. Rowe Price. So what I would have to do in order to figure out the percentage or how much money essentially they're deducting to get paid by selling off some of my shares daily, by the way. Daily. This is not something that happens monthly or whatever else. This is happening daily. They're going in, their actuaries are going in daily and taking out these fractions of my shares. I would have to know like what that stock traded at for the day. I would have to know, like, I would have to go in and I would have to see how much it changed by, which I don't even know if I have access to that information, like what my purchase is, because I can see it for every pay. I can see it every 2 weeks. So I'd have to see what the unit share price was. I'd have to see the number of shares. I'd have to see like how much that changed by. But like, of course, I don't have access to that information. And that lack of transparency for me is very frustrating. So again, not all 403Bs are bad, right? What you have parked in your 403B garage, it could be a good investment. There are vendors out there that are selling low cost investments. And again, maybe you want an annuity. An annuity can be a beneficial product for people who are looking for that security of lifetime payments. There's a time and a place for it. And there's nothing's for free. I understand that. I think everybody understands that. But some of the lack of transparency or ability to see what is being taken out is frustrating for me. Somebody who wants to know where my money is going and how it's being invested. And again, he told me to bank on just 2%. But when you think about that 2% over time, if you think back to your algebra class, right? When you think about compounding interest, if that 2% is coming out annually, that 2% that I would have otherwise had in that account would be growing exponentially over the next 15, 20, and if you're a young teacher, 30 years. And that can amount, depending on how much you're investing, to tens of thousands, to not, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I'll just end this with saying that you can't evaluate your product if you don't know what it is. In my next video, I'm hoping to go into a little bit more detail about those expenses and explaining what those are so that it might be helpful for people who want to start asking those questions.